Hello and welcome. The infamous spat between President Trump and Ukrainian President Zelensky in the Oval Office on 28th of February attracted countless eyeballs for obvious reasons. That is because most of us have never ever seen a crucial diplomatic tour being conducted in such an undiplomatic manner, under the full glare of media effects. However, behind closed doors, tense talks have happened several times between the US presidents and other heads of state. So, in today's segment, firstly, let's take a quick look over those instances where such hostile exchanges happened between previous US presidents and a foreign leader. Secondly, we'll analyze as to what led to that situation where both leaders, which means Trump and Zelensky's personal hatred towards each other, became a public spectacle. And thirdly, we'll conclude by reflecting as to what the 10-minute-long tense conversation informs us about the radical shift in America's foreign policy. So let's get started with a history, or rather a brief history of undiplomatic diplomacy. I'll give you a few examples only. Number one, Kennedy and Nikita Khrushchev in 1961. During the Vienna summit, Soviet Premier Khrushchev aggressively chatted with President Kennedy on issues like Berlin and nuclear disarmament. The confrontation left Kennedy shaken, in fact. Number two, Johnson and Pearson in 1965. President Johnson had an ugly exchange with the Canadian Prime Minister Pearson after Pearson publicly criticized US involvement in Vietnam. Then Johnson reportedly grabbed Pearson by the lapels, admonishing him for his comments. Number three, Nixon and Nikita Khrushchev in 1959. The then Vice President Nixon engaged in a spontaneous and heated discussion with Khrushchev about the merits of capitalism versus communism during an American exhibition in Moscow. Number four, Reagan and Mikhail Gorbachev in 1986. At a seminar, a discussion on nuclear disarmament broke down due to disagreements over the Strategic Defense Initiative, leading to a tense conclusion without an agreement. Number five, Obama and Benjamin Netanyahu in 2010. Tensions arose over Israeli settlement policies, culminating in a notably strained meeting where President Obama left Prime Minister Netanyahu to deliberate with his aides while he had dinner with his family. Number six, Trump and Malcolm Turnbull in 2017. President Trump abruptly ended a phone call with the Australian Prime Minister over a refugee agreement, reportedly stating that it was his worst call by far. Now, so let's have only three examples of US presidents' heated conversations with Indian prime ministers, not to mention that India has not been an ally with the US over these years. Number one, Kennedy versus Nehru in 1962, the India-China War tensions. During the 1962 India-China War, India asked for military aid from the US, but Nehru was reluctant to align too closely with Washington due to India's policy of non-alignment. Kennedy wanted India to take a firm stance against communism and align with the West, leading to a very tense discussions about military and political cooperation. Number 2, Bill Clinton and Atal Bihari Vajpayee in 1998 nuclear tests. In fact, after India's second nuclear test in 1998, US President Bill Clinton strongly opposed India's action and imposed sanctions on the country. Clinton had a bitter exchange with the Prime Minister of India, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, demanding India roll back its nuclear program, but Vajpayee stood firm, asserting India's right to security, leading to a diplomatic standoff. But the worst fight, folks, I'm going to mention now, which happened between Richard Nixon and Indira Gandhi in 1971. The India-Pakistan War that led to the formation of Bangladesh. So declassified tapes revealed Nixon and his Secretary of State Henry Kissinger making disparaging comments about Indira Gandhi, calling her an old witch and using offensive language against Indians. However, Indira Gandhi, in a meeting with Nixon, remained calm despite the hostility, while Nixon favored Pakistan's military ruler Yahya Khan brazenly and opposed India's interventions. So in those days, my dear friends, we didn't have the digital media of today's scale, and not to mention that the traditional Western press, being a mouthpiece of the Western narrative, in most cases defended the US president's position as the only righteous voice promoting justly peace and stability in the world. And all these examples tell us that the US presidents have snubbed multiple times the heads of state from their allies like Canada, Israel, Australia, and from non-allies as well. That is nothing so new in that sense. Now, back to our main event, that is the substance of the Trump-Zelensky fiasco and its reasoning. In fact, from cold shoulders to full-blown clash. So, viewers, if you watch the entire conversation in the first 30 minutes, the atmosphere remained pretty calm and normal, in fact. The scenario started becoming less friendly when the American side realized that Zelensky was much more tilted towards the continuation of the war and seeking security guarantee at the same time. Both these points didn't match well with Trump and his officials, obviously, because their sole effort was to get the Ukrainian side to accept the diplomatic channel to put an end to the war. When Vice President Vance entered the fray with his statement, diplomacy is the only way forward, and then Zelensky's sarcastic rebuttal, let me ask you a question. What kind of diplomacy are you talking about? This refutation, in fact, a refutation turned relatively a peaceful environment into chaos. Of course, the rhetorical question gave a clear-cut picture of Zelensky's intent, that he didn't want the war to end, which meant that he didn't want peace, which also meant that he was playing as per the European gallery, where leaders want the war to continue at least for one more year, so that Russia could be brought to its knees and beg for its end. That's what Secretary Rubio is found to be sharing in his CNN interview, for which I'll share the link in below in the description box. So when Trump and his team find someone advancing the globalist European interests, whom they consider ideologically cousins to the Biden and Harris administration, in this case Zelensky was doing exactly the same, then all knives were out for him. Furthermore, Zelensky moved on to say something even much more catastrophic, and that was his statement, you've got a nice ocean. You don't feel the pain, but you'll feel that in the future. Viewers, well, these words can challenge any US president's ego for that matter, and what to talk of Donald Trump. His level of infuriation is widely known to be as high as his inability to conceal his temperament in delicate situations. So Zelensky's nice ocean remark took things spiraled out of hand because a leader who's already lost a war, questioning the might of the United States, sitting in the very heart of it, which is in the Oval Office, and that man has been fighting the war thanks to the United States. So Zelensky forgot that he'd gone there to ask for something on which his secure survival of his country rests. Zelensky, misreading the room, thought he was still in the European Union's echo chamber, where he's been treated as a hero. What he forgot was that he was dealing with a man who respects power, not please. Certainly his advisors wouldn't have told him to do some sort of homework, or probably he felt he wouldn't need to do any prior preparation because he is a war hero, a pampered child of the liberal world. He's not used to facing any criticism at his face over these 3 years, in fact. But when Zelensky sensed that the wind was blowing in the opposite direction in the room with questions like, "Why don't you wear a suit?" Although this is really a dumb question, he would have realized that it is the time to rock the boat by saying something provocative to exasperate the emotion on the other side of the table. So this brings us to think about the people, those who were sitting on the other side of the table, that is the Trump administration. So why did they behave in that manner? Well, in one of my previous videos in Hindi, I'll put the link below in the description box, I stress that heads of state are neither friends nor foes to each other, but they are simply driven by their brutal transactional interests. And that is also true that their way of perceiving national interest can vary from one to another political ideology. In other words, the way Democrats view American strategic interests, the Republicans might not see in the same manner. So, according to the Biden-Harris administration, along with their liberal European elites or allies, so to say, waging a proxy war against Russia via Ukraine through a means of advancing the umbrella of NATO was a way of serving the interests of the common Western bloc, which the present Washington administration vehemently disagrees with, because in their views, the American interests are no more linked, in fact, with those of their European allies. According to them, China is much bigger threat to the United States. So by weakening Russia, which was the plan of the Biden administration and the liberal EU members, the US would allow Russia to fall into the Chinese lap, which ultimately would make them much stronger, in fact. In addition, by continuing this war, the US will dissipate its energy and resources in someone else's war. So the US is returning towards the old policy which is used to pursue before the First World War, and that is to secure one's interest and not to get involved in foreign wars in any foreign land. That can be termed as a tectonic shift in the US foreign policy. Now, in conclusion, I would like to say that Trump and Zelensky clash should be seen as a clear snub and a wake-up call for the Europeans. The Transatlantic alliance that came into being with the dawn of the Second World War is clearly crumbling. Thus, the European leaders should now stop relying upon the US for their security. Rather, they must work on their strategic autonomy. It is important to admit that the Europeans, since the end of the Second World War, have developed a tendency to depend on other power poles for their needs. For energy, they depended on Russian oil and gas. For goods and products manufacturing, they relied upon China. And most importantly, one of the most crucial aspects of the statecraft, defense and security, which they in fact outsourced to the United States over all these decades since the end of the Second World War. So some wishful thinkers in the European gallery still believe that this standoff or divorce, whatever you want to call it, will prevail only for the next 4 years till the time Trump remains in the White House. But in my view, that might not be the case. It has become, in fact, very much a part of Republican way of advancing American interests. And even Democrats, once in power, will be forced to absorb and to adopt some of the present administration's policies. So now the question is not whether Europe should work or not on its strategic autonomy, because they don't have any other choice, but the real question is this: whether a globalist Europe, because of its internal differences, can have a vision, boldness, and resources of every sort to execute a common system of security. That's it. Thank you very much. So don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time, stay curious. Bye-bye.